Welcome to the Ramon Valley Democratic Club. My name is Brody Hilp. I serve as president, and I'm here with board member Rocio Ross. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight, we have 7 speakers on the California propositions, and I'm so glad we are discussing them because several of the propositions are more complicated than what they may seem like, and certainly more complicated than what we know about them from watching TV commercials. So since we have our speakers are ready to speak, I'm only going to make a short announcement. And that announcement is that we need to get the word out about our wonderful candidates. This weekend is a big canvassing weekend in San Ramon for 4 candidates. For San Ramon City Council, Sabina Zaffer for mayor, Sarah Lashalot for District 2, and Marisol Rubio for District 4. And overlapping in San Ramon is Anayte Latona campaigning for Contra Costa County Board of Education, Area 4, which is our area of Danville and San Ramon. And so when you go to door this weekend, you can hand out material for all 4 candidates. And you will meet at the San Ramon Central Park on Saturday at 9:30 a.m. And guess what? When you come back from canvassing at 1 o'clock, the chair of the California Democratic Party, Rusty Hicks, will be at Central Park at 1 o'clock after the canvassing. These races are so important that the chair of the California Democratic Party will be there. So I hope you can be active and do that. And then if you are in Danville and you want to walk for our endorsed school board candidate, Michelle Peterson, starting October 1st. Look and chat for more details. You can also look at my SRVDC newsletter emails about opportunities to phone bank and to text. Okay, now for our speakers. We will first consider Proposition 30, which provides funding for programs to reduce air pollution and prevent wildfires by increasing the tax on personal income over $2 million. Sandra Lowe will speak in favor of Proposition 30. Sandra is a progressive political consultant. She has worked on the consumer privacy ballot measure, minimum wage increase, and earned income tax credit policies. She was the senior strategist for the California Democratic Party's successful 2018 campaign. Prior to joining the Democratic Party staff, she was the assistant manager for the California Teachers Association, Governmental Relations Department. Sandra graduated with honors from the University of California at Berkeley and holds teaching credentials in math and social science. A lifelong Democrat, she is a member of the Democratic National Committee, and in November 2021, she was elected to the Sonoma City Council. Congratulations, Sandra.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Do I start now? Is this
Yeah.
part? Okay. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And I'm so glad to be back to your visiting your club, Brody. I've been here several times. And as some of you know, my mother lives in Contra Costa County, so I go there very often and think about it as a second home. I'm very proud to be working on this campaign. Brody said there's some initiatives that are confusing. This initiative isn't very confusing. It is what it says it is. It's a tax on people who make $2 million or more a year, and the money goes into cleaning our air by doing 3 things: reducing forest fires. The money goes into CAL FIRE, and that's why CAL FIRE has endorsed the initiative and was part of the drafting of the initiative. It goes into electric vehicle infrastructure, primarily in communities that are underserved, and also money goes into incentives to help people purchase zero emission vehicles. That is the initiative. What is not in the initiative is anything about ride sharing or Lyft. I know you've seen a lot on the TV about it. There is nothing in the initiative that gives any money to any ride sharing companies at all. And if you know how that company works, those people own their cars. And so you could make an amazing connection between someone buying a car and somebody working for a rideshare company. But the reality is no money goes to corporations. All of this money goes to underserved communities to help clear the air. This is something that we need. We are in a climate crisis. I think all of you would agree on that. And the plan so far to deal with this crisis relies on one-time money from the surplus that we have in California. But that is one-time money. That is money that it's an amazing amount this year, but next year we're predicted to have a deficit. They're already predicting 12% less than projected in the state budget. And yet we have a mandate to turn in electric vehicles in basically 20 years, everybody in electric vehicles, no more selling gas vehicles. So how do we do this? And with the hopes of doing it on one-time money every year, we need sustainable funding that is progressive taxation for the people who can afford it. And it's a small percent. If you make $2 million plus one after taxes, it's something like 20 bucks. But there's a lot of people who make that money. So it's enough to fill our coffers and take care of this program. We are endorsed by Barbara Lee, Ro Khanna, the California Democratic Party, many, many members of the legislature, including the chairs of the Environmental Caucus. We are endorsed by the major mayors in the Bay Area and the Association of Bay Area Governments. Why? Because the money will go to provide for their communities. This is a very simple measure. It is enjoying great popularity. People know we have to do something. I live in Sonoma County. We've been fighting fires here almost every year. This month alone, 90,000 kids, 90,000 students were out of their classrooms because of firefighting, bad air, school closures in 6 different counties. This is critical for our kids. It's critical for our future. Please support Yes on 30. Join the building trades. It's a Green New Deal project. Join all the environmental activists and the Democratic Party and say yes on 30. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we have a question. If you raise your hand, if you have a question for Sandra. I believe Karen Jefferson, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, I would. Why is Lyft funding the proposition to the tune of $15 million? And they must have some financial incentive in a yes on the proposition to be putting $15 million into it.
Well, I think you could ask, why is Sierra Pacific funding the No campaign? And why is David Crane, who wants to get rid of teacher pensions, fund the No campaign? I mean, we're glad that Lyft is funding it because it takes a lot of money to get a ballot measure on there. They worked with the building trades, IBEW, and the Clean Air Coalition went to them and asked for the funding to put this on the ballot. Every single ballot measure, as you look down, has some big funding in it. It takes $10 million just to get the thing qualified. I know, I worked on one of them that is going to be on 2024, which will increase the minimum wage. And it cost $10 million just to get it there. And we relied on a very wealthy guy to fund it. It's unfortunate that we are in the situation in California where we can't just hang out at the farmer's market and get signatures and get something on the ballot anymore. It's become big business. And we're grateful that a company believes that they're doing the right thing. When companies do the wrong thing, and believe me, Lyft's done some of the wrong things. I didn't like their Prop 22, by the way. But when they do the right thing, we have to say thank you. When they do the wrong thing, we have to hold them accountable. And in this case, they're doing the right thing. And that should not stop you from saying yes to this proposition, because it's a good thing for California.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great
and
question.
that's about time. I don't know if we had any other quick questions. Okay, now we're going to move on to our next speaker, who is Joshua Heller, and he will speak no on Proposition 30, telling us the backstory of why encouraging EV vehicles is not the best solution. Joshua is a veteran of multiple ballot initiative campaigns, including the No on 32, which was the ban on corporate special interest campaign finance loopholes. That was in 2012. In 2016, he participated in the Yes on Prop 55 about school funding. In 2020, he worked on the No on Prop 22, which was about Uber and Lyft labor law exemptions. Josh earned his BA in economics from Butler University in Indianapolis. And interesting to us, in AD 16, Josh worked on former Assembly member Joe Buchanan's re-election campaigns in 2010 and 2012. Thank you, Josh, for being here tonight.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I think the biggest thing I want to bring up, and someone asked the question about why Lyft has spent 15 million. It's now up to 20. They've now spent more than $25 million on this ballot initiative. Big corporations, publicly traded corporations, do not spend $25 million unless it's in their financial interest. The proponents can say these ballot measures are written by lawyers. The devil's always going to be the details. Lyft probably had, I'm sure their lawyers looked over this stuff. I will tell you why this initiative is strongly opposed by the California Teachers Association, the California Federation of Teachers, Governor Newsom, United Domestic Workers, the NAACP, and the California School Employees Association. This measure sets a horrible precedent. All of the revenue that is raised from this measure is quartered off from the state general fund. That means the constitutional education funding guarantee, Prop 98, is this money goes around, it evades that. This measure provides no flexibility in the state budget. As we just heard, we're expected to have budget deficits in the near future. Any of the money that is raised in this ballot measure cannot be used to help other important government services. So when we see cuts to education, cuts to healthcare, cuts to transportation, the subsidies in this that Lyft will benefit from, they'll be made whole while our kids and our healthcare will take a hit. Sorry, yeah, my son. So Governor Newsom in the state speaking towards zero emission vehicles in the previous budget, Governor Newsom and the legislature set aside $10 billion for zero emission vehicles and made record investments in wildfire prevention. This measure really is a bargain that California cannot afford. I'm asking you to vote no on Proposition 30.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for Joshua? Let me look at my gallery view. Oh, Virginia Derico?
Yeah. Josh, thank you for your presentation. What are the subsidies that would be provided for Lyft that you mentioned?
Sorry, I was on mute. This measure, they are bankrolled this measure. There's subsidies in here for zero emission vehicles. Lyft purposefully objected to the mandate on requiring them to require their drivers to have these type of zero emission vehicles. They have publicly said that they can only do it with subsidies. And lo and behold, we have a ballot measure that provides a zero emission vehicle subsidies, and they are spending $25 million to promote it. I think it's pretty clear that they benefit from subsidies from that. While there may not be language in here that says there's money directly for Lyft, we all know the companies with the best lawyers normally benefit from the laws.
So does Lyft own their own cars, or would it go to the drivers for subsidizing their?
Well, it may go to the drivers, but Lyft is required by law to have their drivers in zero emission vehicles. So Lyft will be penalized if their drivers do not have these vehicles. So they have strong incentive to create these subsidies. Whether the drivers get the subsidies, Lyft has an incentive for these subsidies. That's why they're spending this type of money.
So you're saying that the money could go to Lyft as opposed to their drivers?
Well, I didn't say there's money, there's no money in here that's gonna go into Lyft's coffers per se, but Lyft is gonna be required to have their drivers have zero emission vehicles. So they either can pay for it or they can try and have the taxpayers pay for it. So
The
what do you-
taxpayers paying for
the
private.
subsidies to
owned
build
drivers.
for these zero emission vehicles. So if the taxpayers aren't paying for these subsidies, that means Lyft is gonna probably have to provide these subsidies to the drivers. So they've decided that taxpayers should pay for it instead of Lyft. Lyft spent $25 million on this. They could have handed out $25 million in subsidies to their drivers right now to buy zero emission vehicles. I don't see them doing that.
Thank you, Josh.
Okay. Sharon and Ellis, did you have a question? I thought I
No,
saw.
I think that he pretty much answered it. I wanted to know what Gavin was talking about, and he pretty much answered that. But maybe you can comment on this. I understand that if an entrepreneur wanted to get together something like $1 million, they would buy a fleet of these vehicles and they would subcontract with Lyft or Uber or one of those. We lost my voice again. And those are the people who are really going to benefit, because they'll throw in like $1 million and they'll get $100,000 in subsidies to buy a fleet of zero emission vehicles. Did you hear all of that, Brody?
Yes, but yes, okay, thank you.
It really wasn't a question. It was really a comment on how it's going to work in a business sense.
Okay, Josh, did you have anything to respond to that? I don't-
Not specifically. I mean, I'm not against subsidies for zero emission vehicles. I mean, the state just has provided $10 billion in money for zero emission vehicles. That's an important thing, but I don't think it should come at the expense of public education or the state general fund, or especially to benefit one giant corporation that spent $25 million. And I'm sure there's more money where that came from.
Okay,
I agree. Thank you.
okay, thank you, Joshua. Now we're going to move on to our next proposition, which is Proposition 26. Proposition 26 allows in-person roulette, dice games, and sports wagering on tribal lands. I assume this means at casinos. Kyle Griffith will speak for yes on Proposition 26. Kyle is the Senior Coalition Supervisor with the Coalition for Safe, Responsible Gaming. He oversees grassroots outreach, mobilization, and coalition building. He works at Bicker, Castillo, Fairbanks Public Affairs prior to joining BCF. He worked for Congressman Jeff Denham, but we talked about that, and he is not a Republican. He is a no party preference. So anyway, thank you, Kyle, for being here.
Excellent, thank you. If you are like me, I'm sure you're probably tired of seeing all of the sports betting ballot measure campaign commercials. So hopefully, we can clear up some of the confusion, and I'm happy to answer any questions about them after. I'm here presenting on behalf of the Coalition for Safe, Responsible Gaming. We're formed by a coalition of California's Indian tribes in support of Proposition 26 and in opposition to Proposition 27. If you're wondering why California voters are faced with these measures, in 2018, the Supreme Court essentially left it up to each state to determine how they authorize sports betting, whether it's in person, online, or some combination of the two. For more than 20 years, California's tribes have been responsible stewards of gaming, operating highly regulated casinos on tribal lands. This tribal gaming has enabled these tribes to build self-reliance and provide services to their members. And with that spirit in mind, Proposition 26 would continue to build on that legacy by granting the tribes the right to offer highly regulated in-person sports betting at tribal casinos and select racetracks. It also authorizes additional table games like craps and roulette. But our main point with Proposition 26 is, in-person sports betting is by far safer and more responsible than online sports betting. By requiring people to be physically present in person to place bets, it virtually eliminates the risks of underage gambling. It also contains strong enforcement elements against illegal gambling and provides resources to prevent and treat problem gaming behaviors. Tribal gaming is the main economic engine for these tribes. As mentioned, the revenues, create services like healthcare, housing, infrastructure, and education for tribal communities. And Prop 26 will allow them to build on that legacy. It also helps the smaller and non-gaming tribes by increasing funds distributed through the Revenue Sharing Trust Fund. Currently, non-gaming tribes receive $1.1 million through this fund. If Prop 26 passes, that would nearly double to $2 million per year. The revenues from Prop 26 are dedicated to the general fund, ensuring Prop 98 requirements are met. 15% of the revenues would be dedicated to the Department of Justice for enforcement and regulation of new forms of gambling, as well as 15% to problem gaming treatment and prevention. The nonpartisan LAO anticipates this is going to raise tens of millions of dollars to support California's other priorities. The tribal gaming industry as a whole creates and sustains over 150,000 jobs statewide and generates $27 billion for the state economy. The tribes, through these tribal state compacts, also contribute over $5.1 billion annually in tax revenue to federal, state, and local governments. I wanted to take a minute to talk about the enforcement element in Proposition 26. Opposition to 26 is driven in large part by California's cardroom casinos, who are claiming that this measure is going to shut down every card room in the state through frivolous lawsuits. That is quite simply not true. Proposition 26 will not shut down a single card room that is operating in compliance with our existing gaming laws. The Department of Justice and the Attorney General still have the opportunity to investigate any claims of wrongdoing. And if they're found to be no violations, no harm, no foul. If there are violations, it carries a maximum penalty of $10,000. I find it hard to believe that the $10,000 fines are going to shut anyone down. The cardroom casinos behind the opposition to Prop 26 have a very long and well-documented history of breaking our gambling laws, from facilitating loan sharking to operating money laundering and even illegal sports betting rings. The cardroom casinos behind the opposition to 26 just fear the additional scrutiny that would come with this measure. Our Prop 26 is supported by 90 organizations throughout the state, including the Dolores Huerta Foundation, the California State NAACP, the Young Democrats, California LULAC, La Raza Roundtable of California, and dozens of other organizations. And we hope that you will join with us in voting yes on Prop 26 this November.
Thank you. Before we go on, could someone please mute themselves? Vicky, I see that you're not muted. Could you please mute yourself because we're getting background noise? Or else we will have to ask you to leave the meeting.
That actually might be me.
is that
I
you?
am double booked. I have another Zoom meeting up on my phone, so I'm sorry if I'm split attention.
Okay. Well, thank you. I hope. Okay. Do we have any? We have one question for you, Karen Jefferson.
I guess I'm a little confused. If I vote no on 26 and no on 27, what will happen? What will be different than now? What does 26 really bring to the table? I guess I'm still a little bit confused.
Sure. So if you vote no on both, then the status quo exists. Sports betting is illegal in California. Prop 26 would authorize sports betting only in person. So like if you think about Vegas casinos, like that, how they have the sports books with the wall of TVs, that is the kind of sports gambling that would be authorized under Prop 26. Prop 27 would be online sports betting through your phones on DraftKings, FanDuel, those kinds of platforms.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for Kyle? Okay, well, thank you, Kyle. Oh, Stephanie, yes.
Yeah, so can you tell us who's the largest donor that that is opposes this?
Oh, that opposes? Goodness gracious, give me just 1 second. I believe it is Knighted Ventures, which operates several card room casinos throughout the state. But 1 second, I have a document here with it. Marcus, do you happen to know off the top of your head who the biggest funders are?
Yeah, let me pull that up and help you real quick. California Commerce Club, Hawaiian Gardens Casino, and United Ventures are the biggest proponents of no, and his biggest proponents are 4 of the largest tribal casinos.
Yeah, it's Pechanga, Yochadihi, Winton Nation, and the Great Federation in Sonoma.
Okay, so so that's a card club. That's actual physical casino. I think it's somewhere in Southern California. That's
Yeah.
the largest.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can go into more detail on all of that. Hawaiian Gardens is a large casino that operates within the city limits of Hawaiian Gardens, which is a small city in LA. And I might be able to answer some of your questions before we, have to make Kyle answer them all.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Helen,
So if I if I understood you correctly, this will double the amount, the revenue for non-gaming tribes, is that correct?
That's the projection, yes. The tribes sponsoring Proposition 26 have committed to contributing 15% of the revenues from sports betting, craps, and roulette to the revenue sharing trust fund, which would increase the payments from $1.1 million to $2 million per year.
Okay, thanks.
okay, my question was, if it's going to double the revenue for non-gaming tribes, but that's just some non-gaming tribes. Do all the tribes get this money or just some of the ones that have, just some non-gaming tribes?
Sure. So the revenue sharing trust fund is established by the compacting process that was voted in Proposition 5. And so all the gaming tribes pay into the revenue sharing trust fund, which is dispensed out to non-gaming and limited gaming tribes. So there are tribes with casinos that would actually receive some of this funding. The RSTF, to answer your other question, is it all tribes? It's all the federally recognized tribes that are limited gaming or non-gaming. The larger gaming tribes, I think the cutoff is 500 slot machines to, be considered a large gaming tribe, do not receive any funding through the revenue sharing trust fund. It is only the smaller and non-gaming tribes that receive those funds.
So it's only tribes that are already have gambling.
No, it is some with gambling and then the ones that do not have any gambling that receive this funding.
So, but does that make it all tribes then? No.
There are
federally-
non-federally recognized tribes that in California as well that are not eligible for
I
this
see.
funding, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. Helen, you can take your hand down now. Do we have any other questions for Kyle? Okay, let's move on to Marcus Wolfe. He'll be speaking on the no on Proposition 26. Marcus is a government affairs professional who currently works as a full-time consultant on multiple races for candidates seeking public office. He works also as a data collection expert. He did this for a nonprofit organization that supports school districts, helping them to close the digital divide. In addition, he is one of the representatives for the No on 26 campaign within the Democratic Party. Earlier this year, he graduated with a Master's of Public Administration from the University of McGeorge School of Law in Sacramento. Thank you, Marcus.
Hi, everybody. Hope your night's going well. I'll make this short and sweet. AFSCME of California is asking on the Democratic Party to oppose the Tribal Sports Wagering Act, mostly because of the danger it poses to their union members, who could lose up to 32,000 jobs statewide in a variety of different cities. And that's because of the potential loss of $500 million in local tax revenue that Prop 26 poses. To be clear, there are 3 different ballot initiatives happening right now simultaneously. There's 26, there's 27. And then there's another one that the San Manuel Band of Mission Indians is also pursuing, which, we're completely neutral on simply because it doesn't have the Private Attorney General's Act provision in it, which is going to do all the damage that I'm going to explain right now. Another problem with Prop 26, it's only supported by about 25% of California's Native American tribes. Prop 26 is strongly opposed by 13 of the state's largest newspapers. That's the San Francisco Chronicle, the LA Times, Mercury, the Sacramento Bee. AFSCME is really worried about this, and that's why the statewide organization itself has come out publicly opposed to this. Also, the following cities are opposed to Prop 26: the city of Bell Gardens, the city of Bellflower, the city of Citrus Heights, Clovis, Commerce, Compton, Cudahy, Hawaiian Gardens, Huntington Park, Linwood, Montebello, and San Jose. The 4 largest tribes have pooled over $100 million to get Prop 26 passed. The card rooms at the same time have spent less than 50. Proponents say Kyle and his team say that only those card rooms that violate the law will have the Private Attorney General's Act enforcement brought against them. The devil in the details here is that if these cases are not decided by the Attorney General within 90 days, they become civil litigation. You can imagine how this could grow out of control when card rooms will have to fight endless lawsuits that will cost them millions of dollars simply just to clear their names and prove no wrongdoing. Kyle cited a couple, instances where there was money laundering, those things happening. Those things came to light when those particular card rooms were found guilty of committing a crime. They paid the fine they were supposed to pay. And, the Attorney General either chose to put them out of business or to let them maintain their licenses. So that's the only reason we even know about that stuff. Most card rooms are completely operating above the law. The state's gambling commission has ruled multiple times that the card rooms that operate within cities that are not tribal casinos have the right to exist. It's like we're sitting here potentially going to pass a ballot initiative that is going to give the tribes and private citizens to bring civil litigation against their main competitors, the card rooms, which many instances are smaller operations, and they're going to be possibly put out of business. And that's why cities across the state are worried about this, because they depend on that revenue, because those card rooms operate and exist within those cities. And AFSCME is so concerned about this, the statewide organization came out against it, is publicly opposed, and they're just calling on the Democratic Party to vote no on this initiative and bring something else to the table. I mean, honestly, if the status quo of gambling were left in place and the tribes were simply just getting sports betting, we'd be completely fine with that. What we're dealing with right now, though, is putting in this provision that's going to allow the tribes to sue their competitors. And that's why everyone's so publicly opposed to this.
Wow. Could you explain, when you say AFSCME, I don't think everyone knows what that is here. I know what it is, but could you explain about the unions and what AFSCME is?
It's the American Federation of State and City Municipal Employees. It's one of the biggest unions that employs city and governmental workers.
And how are they affected again?
So cities throughout the state that have card rooms that operate within their jurisdictions, those card rooms pay taxes to those local government entities. And those local government entities, in some instances, have become dependent on this revenue, right? I mean, some cities have plenty of, operations going on for a variety of different industries, but some cities, like the city of Hawaiian Gardens, which has a large casino in it, Hawaiian Gardens makes up 75% of their local revenue. If they lost that revenue, their city is going to go bankrupt. The city of Commerce, also in Los Angeles County, 41% of their revenue. City of Colma, 23%. Bell Gardens, 40%. One of the people who has been actively campaigning with us is Jorge Chavez, who's the youngest elected official in the state, and he is on the Bell Gardens City Council. He knows that there is so much at stake for his city, which he loves and recently was elected to. So there's so much at stake here, guys. Like we just need to really consider what the ramifications of this could be. And doing nothing just leaves the tribes to come back with a better initiative that doesn't harm their competitors.
Hmm. And I read a blog by Professor I. Nelson Rose. Could you?
Yes. Yeah. So Mr. Nelson is an internationally known author, public speaker, and recognized as one of the world's leading experts on gambling and gaming law. He's currently a professor emeritus at Whittier College and a visiting professor at the University of Macau. He graduated from UCLA with his undergrad and Harvard Law School with his law degree. He's considered the world's preeminent, intellectual person for gambling law, and he thinks that this is a bad initiative.
Okay.
Ms. Hope, if I may, share the
I-
tribal perspective on this.
Yeah, and I also wanted to say, I posted something in here. That's because Marcus gave it to me. I'm not sure. As speakers, are you able to post something in chat?
I'm not. I'm only able to respond to either Marcus or you.
Oh, okay. If you want to give it to me, I can, if there's anything you want to give me, I can post it on here. But
Sure, I
anyway,
mean-
yes, please respond.
Yeah, so I mean, the conflict between the tribes and the card rooms centers around house banked games. And with the passage of the various ballot measures that granted the rights to tribes to offer gaming on their tribal lands, it includes the exclusive right to offer certain classifications of games. Marcus is absolutely right that the card room casinos have a place in the fabric of the gambling industry in California. They're able to offer what are known as Class 2 games, which are games where it's player versus player. Tribes have the exclusive right to offer Class 3 games, which are games of chance, where you play against the house, like slot machines or blackjack. The issue at hand has to do with the operation of blackjack or house banked games in California, and card rooms are using a loophole, using a third-party banker in order to circumvent the prohibition on 21. All of this is outlined in the Professor Rose blog that you posted. The issue at hand is that California tribes feel that the card rooms are breaking the law in this, and when they've tried to bring suits to the courts in order to determine whether or not this is valid, they have been thrown out because the tribes as sovereign nations lack standing to bring those suits to the courts. Without the ability to get relief from the courts, in 2019, the California Bureau of Gambling Control initiated rulemaking procedures to clear up these rules, to figure out, here's your lane, here's your lane. But the card rooms once again said that it's going to shut down the entire industry, kill all the jobs, etc. So the tribes couldn't get any relief through the Gambling Control Commission. So with no other options, including from the legislature, SCA 6 failed. The tribes, in order to gain standing, have introduced that element to Proposition 26 to just have courts rule finally one way or another. Either the card rooms are breaking the law or they're not. And once that precedent is established, then any subsequent lawsuits would be very easily determined. If the card rooms are in support or in compliance with the law, then the suits will be dismissed out of hand, no problem. And to claim that the tribes are going to be utilizing frivolous lawsuits to shut down these card room casinos, there are already frivolous lawsuit mechanisms that they could be using, whether it's PAGA itself, not the enforcement element in Prop 26, or ADA lawsuits. But the tribes are not interested in shutting down the card rooms. They're simply trying to get clarity on California's existing gaming laws. And that's why it was included in Proposition 26.
Yeah, if I may just, I would say in any industry that operates within this great nation of ours, you wouldn't take to let the competitors in one part of the industry have oversight regulatory kind of control of the other side. Like
But
the tribes
it
should not
wouldn't be
be
the
able
tribes,
to
it would be the
be
courts.
enforcement mechanisms for the law with their competitors.
I'm sorry, Brody, I believe you're
You did. Could you say that again, Marcus? I didn't quite understand.
I just don't think that two competitors within an industry should ever have oversight regulatory control in any mechanism for someone within their industry, right? We wouldn't give Facebook regulatory kind of operations over anything that Twitter's doing. And I just think that the fact that this was included in a ballot initiative about sports betting is just a little underhanded. And given that we're probably entering a recession and, you know, potentially there's all kinds of loss of revenue already happening all over the state, I just don't think it's the right time or place to be adding these kinds of regulations that could put an entire industry at risk.
Kyle, this is complicated. Do you have a response?
Yeah, it's not the tribes regulating the card rooms. It's allowing the Department of Justice and the courts to make a ruling.
I think someone said that if they didn't do it within 90 days, and then
Yeah, no,
Then it goes to the courts.
if it doesn't
Once
happen
again, where the
within 90
courts
days,
will determine.
it goes to civil court. It goes to civil court. If it doesn't, the AG can't rule on it in 90 days, it goes to civil court. And if there's an influx of lawsuits when this is passed, you can imagine how time consuming and burdensome that would become for the AG.
this is very complicated. Claire, do you have a question?
I was just wondering, you had, well, I guess either one of you could answer, but are there any statistics on, you know, increases in gambling addictions, and how do they deal with problematic gamblers? You mentioned that they would have safeguards in place, but what specifically do they do to prevent people from, you know, gambling their life savings away?
I mean, yeah, I mean, Kyle might have more on that, but yeah, voting no on 26 would not increase any new opportunities for gambling.
Sure, and you know, in terms of the tribes, you know, casinos are very sophisticated in ensuring that underage folks aren't able to access the casino floors. In addition to requiring ID to be presented in person when placing a wager. Furthermore, brick and mortar casinos have self-exclusion lists that will enable people to remove themselves from being able to visit a casino or place bets on that facility, which is a way that individuals can prevent themselves from, you know, succumbing further to addiction. The last point I want to raise is, you know, just the nature of sports betting in general, in person versus online. By constraining it to in person, people are going to have to physically travel to a location to place bets versus online sports betting, which, you know, people will have immediate access to whenever and wherever they want, which I can touch on later when we discuss Proposition
You posted
27.
that, but I just, you know, I don't know. I personally don't think that more gambling opportunities are necessarily better for people. But anyway.
I totally understand. And there's nothing that I can say is going to change that. And I wouldn't even attempt to change your mind.
Stephanie, do you have a question?
Yeah, I guess it's really just a comment. I just really appreciate the dialogue on this. I've lived a good part of my life in Southern California, and I am familiar with that area. And those are cities with you know, predominantly low income earners. And I think that's just a really important thing to remember then, is if those cities are damaged, there are not a lot of other resources. And you have, you know, many immigrant families in that area, and they need those services. So the people in many of those cities that that were named earlier are you know, vulnerable families.
Okay, I think we need to move on. I hope we still have our speaker. Margaret, are you still here?
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay, do you have time for me to give a introduction to you, or would you like to speak now?
Oh, absolutely. Go with your introduction.
Okay, let me get to this. See, we're not going in order. Okay, here we are. Now we're on to Proposition 1, the constitutional right to reproductive freedom. Margaret Martinez Frank will speak in favor of Proposition 1. Margaret is a Bay Area native and at Planned Parenthood, Northern California. She is the interim director of public affairs and of the California Action Fund. She is the lead organizer of the Walnut Creek Patient Escort Program. Previously, Margaret was the data consultant and an election committee member with the Democratic Party of Contra Costa County, and she participates in the Contra Costa Budget Justice Coalition and the Racial Justice Coalition. She was an undergrad at Barnard Women's College of Columbia University. Margaret.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. And thank you, Brody, for going out of order to accommodate. I really appreciate it. thankfully, Prop 1 is very clear and easy, so we don't have to do the whole back and forth. Do you mind if I share my slides, Brody? Is that something I can do?
Rocio has
Yep,
Margaret.
you're a
made-
co-host. Go ahead, Margaret.
you can
Okay,
share
perfect.
your
Thank you
screen.
so much.
Yeah.
Can you all see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Let me just put it on presentation view so that we don't see all of everything. There we go. So I'm Margaret Martinez Franks. Like Brody said, I'm the interim director of public affairs at Planned Parenthood Northern California Action Fund. So I don't work for Prop 1. However, my organization has endorsed, which we're very proud to endorse and contribute, and we hope that you will do the same. Just a quick plug. We do have our 2022 Leadership Summit tomorrow night. It's free of charge if you're interested in going. It's going to be at the San Francisco Health Center, which is our brand new health center on Bush Street in San Francisco. Gorgeous. There's a new large community room, which we're using. Senator Scott Wiener is going to be there along with the manager of the Prop 1 campaign, and our CEO Gilda Gonzalez will be there to speak about Prop 1. So if you're interested in going to that, I highly encourage you to attend. And if you want more information, talk to Brody afterwards and she'll give you my contact information. So the Prop 1, there's a bit of a backstory, and I'll give it, and I'll tell you exactly what happened and in the order it happened, because I know that you're all a bunch of policy nerds like I am. But essentially, I think we can all remember, I think it was May 3rd, when the Dobbs decision was first leaked by the Supreme Court. And it showed very clearly what they were intending to do. And at that moment, thankfully, we have a governor in Gavin Newsom who is an incredible ally of abortion access and abortion rights. And he saw in that moment that it was time for California to formally put abortion access and abortion protection into the California Constitution. So he and others in the Democratic Party wrote what was then called SCA 10, which is now known as Prop 1. And I have the language. So just as a brief summary, Prop 1 just allows people to make their own medical decisions along with their healthcare providers based on fact and not on political agenda. And then here's the language for Prop 1. This is it. A lot of propositions, their language is pages long. This is a paragraph. It's very straightforward. The bulk of it says the state shall not deny or interfere with an individual's reproductive freedom in their most intimate decisions, which includes their fundamental right to choose to have an abortion and their fundamental right to choose or refuse contraceptives. So that's really the bulk of this. This is a, creating freedom for Californians initiative. So we all know what's going on right now. I mean, it's been in the news like pretty much every day for the last week that Republicans are trying to create a nationwide ban. Thankfully, it looks like it's not something that would happen in the near future. However, Proposition 1 was created so that, even if there were, heaven forbid, a ban in the future, that we could be able to go to court and be in the court system for a while to protect access here in California for as long as possible. And until that, horrible day happens, if it does ever happen, California will be a beacon of hope to the whole country, and will be a shining light, an example of, what we can do if we all team together and then create more access instead of less. I just talked about this, so I'm going to skip if it's all right. And I think today I was doing 20 things at once and listening to the news, which is never a good idea because things kind of get jumbled in your head. But I believe I heard, and I'm sure that someone can nod their head if they agree or if they heard this as well, that Kevin McCarthy's GOP plan was, I think, leaked today by error because he accidentally shared it and the password or something in the kind of classic Kevin McCarthy way. And it said explicitly that the GOP plan is to create a ban. So this only highlights why Prop 1 and other constitutional amendments that protect abortion are so critical right now. This is a map as of last week of all of the states that have either banned or created really strict laws around abortion access. This map is from last week, however, it's already outdated. So the map you see is missing 2 states that have enacted abortion bans. One of them is Indiana, has a full abortion ban that went into effect last Friday. So this is something that people, and I mean, these red states are moving on fast. And again, just highlights why we need Proposition 1 to create more freedom instead of less. Ohio is another state that just enacted a ban. It's not a full ban, it's a ban at 15 weeks. And then recently that ban was halted by a judge because he heard about the case, and I'm sure we've all heard about the 10-year-old rape victim who had to go to Indiana to get an abortion. And because of that story, he halted the Ohio ban. So like I said, this map is ever changing, like seriously, every single day it's different. But it's just showing that right now, this is unfortunately a topic that GOP representatives are moving very fast on. So really, just to put it simply, Prop 1 is going to enshrine the fundamental right to an abortion and to contraceptives in the California state constitution. And then I'm going to actually skip to the end because a lot of this is very repetitive. So this is just a partial list of endorsees so far. As you can see, Planned Parenthood, we're very proud to be an endorsee, and we're also the largest contributor, which we're very proud to say. We scraped the money together to make sure that this proposition could go forward. The proposition was only started in, or it was only ratified on June 27th, which was 3 days before the deadline. Thankfully, all of our representatives in the Senate and in the Assembly really got their act together and pushed this through because they understood the gravity of the moment. And because of that, we have this on the November ballot, which we all get to vote on, and hopefully it'll pass. I'll give you a little inside baseball. We've done some polling. It's looking very good, but we just want to make sure that if it passes by a lot, because we want this to be a symbol really for the rest of the country that this is, what we stand for in California is abortion access and abortion freedom. So if you, the club or individually would also like to join our coalition, you can see the link in the website is sort of down there on the bottom right, protectabortionca.com/our-coalition. You can also just go to protectabortionca.com. It also is yesonOneCA.com. They go to the same website if you've seen the other link. The opposition, it's pretty straightforward. It's exactly who you think it'd be. So the California GOP, the California Catholic Conference, and the Conference of Catholic Bishops are all the major players of the opposition, unfortunately, along with, what's the group called? I think it's Democrats for Life, I think is the name, which I'm not sure how many people are in that group by this point, but apparently enough for them to join the opposition. And then additionally, if you want to get involved, go to protectabortionca.com. This Act Now little bar is amazing. There's an activist toolkit with posts and artwork already created for you. So if you support abortion rights, you want to go ahead and just post about it, let your friends know. This is a great resource. I really highly suggest that you go ahead and visit. And then the proposition's also doing phone banks 3 times a week. So if you would like to join a phone bank, go ahead and volunteer with the proposition. They're doing great work. They're just, kind of catching up. We don't have a whole lot of money like Prop 26 and 27 and all of the rest. We're really doing a grassroots campaign just for awareness because we know that the majority of California is behind us on this one. We just need to get the word out. So with that, I can open it up to questions.
Oh, that's my-
Sorry. Do we have any questions for Margaret? Thank you, Margaret. Claire,
I've just gotta unmute myself. Am I muted or can you hear
Oh,
me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I mean, the only criticism I've read of this is that the language is somewhat, I guess, non-specific in regards to certain things. I don't, exactly, but I was just wondering if it does pass as a constitutional amendment, is there a possibility that it could be challenged in the courts, or once it's an amendment, it's a done deal?
I'm not a legal expert, so I'm probably not the person to ask about that. Like I said, I work for Planned Parenthood, so this isn't my day job talking about Prop 1. However, I would definitely encourage you to reach out with that question to the Prop 1 team on their website. There's a section for questions.
Okay.
okay. Well, I think we're all probably in favor of Prop 1. I think, Rick, did you have something? We're
Yeah.
gonna try to give a,
Yeah,
a contradictory statement. here
balanced.
To give you a
Even
balanced
Though
statement.
of what Margaret said, and I'm not on that other side, I will, interest of fairness,
Okay,
say what is being said. Well, we got something from Janet Thomas from the League of Women Voters, and they prepared the opposition. And those opposing Prop 1, that women already have the right to choose under current California law, and that the recent US Supreme Court ruling will not change that. Also, there are those who feel that we do need to protect the rights of the unborn fetus, especially when it reaches a viable age. So that's the main point that they make on the other side.
yes, and as Rick, I think Rick, you'll agree with me that the Supreme Court could, this could be threatening by the Supreme Court. Margaret, would you like to respond?
I'd love to, thank you. So under the California Constitution, there is a right to privacy. However, we saw from the Dobbs decision that that right can be revoked pretty quickly and easily, unfortunately. So this proposition really, makes it very clear and obvious what we're talking about. We're talking about abortion, we're talking about contraception, and that people have the right to it, and that no state can tell them, yes or no.
Yeah, how do I do that?
And then what was the second point? I believe
I think it was just about a viability, but of the fetus. But I think we're all in favor of abortion rights and
Mhm.
right to one's personal health. So anyway, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. And I would also like to uplift something that I saw. I'm sure you all saw. It's been a couple of years since that clip came out, but when Mayor Pete was running for president, whether or not you wanted him to be president or voted for him or not, he said something really compelling about what some people call late-term abortion, and how most of the time when people have to make that horrible decision to terminate a pregnancy, it's not out of vanity, it's out of absolute health necessity. And most of the time these people have chosen names, they have furnished their potential child's room, all of these things. These are issues that should never ever be left up to the state or to any politician and their whims. This should always be a decision that's made by the parent and their doctor.
Yes. Pat, do you have Chris, do you have a question?
It's actually Chris.
Yes.
So I want to say I've spent 25 years of the most rewarding part of my life working with Planned Parenthood, and it is a fantastic organization. And Margaret is just one more in a long line of incredibly impressive young women who work for Planned Parenthood, and it's so good to hear from her. Here's the issue. The current protection in the California Constitution is insufficient. It is not enough. And I think the only rational thing for us to do is to support Proposition 1, because if we don't write this into the state constitution, we already know that not only the Supreme Court of the United States, but the Supreme Court of California, heaven forfend, could take that right away. And so I think we should support this. I think we should donate to it. I think we should work for it. And I think I will accept any lead that Planned Parenthood offers because they've never steered me wrong. And Margaret, thank you so much.
Thank you. That was such kind words. I really appreciate it.
Well, good. Maybe at the end we'll have time to vote on endorsing Prop 1.
I hope so.
Okay, our next speaker is Kelly Hardy. She's going to be speaking on yes on Proposition 31. The Proposition 31 would make it legal to prohibit the retail sale of certain flavored tobacco products. Kelly is the Senior Managing Director for Children Now, an organization she started that takes a whole child approach covering the full range of key children's issues from prenatal through age 26, including early childhood development, education, children's health, childhood trauma and resilience, foster care, and youth justice. Kelly has worked in health policy at the federal, state, and county levels. She has a BA in psychology with a minor in women's studies at Johns Hopkins University, and she earned her master's in public policy and her master's in public health from UC Berkeley. So thank you, Kelly, for being here.
Thanks so much. And I just want to clarify that I didn't start Children Now, although I have been there for 16 years.
Oh,
so you could be forgiven for thinking that. So Kelly Hardy with Children Now, we're a statewide advocacy organization on behalf of kids. I live in El Cerrito, which I realize is not super close to you guys, but neighbors. And I want to talk about Yes on 31. I received our Contra Costa voter information guide just recently, and it really says it quite simply. A yes vote on 31 means in-person stores and vending machines could not sell most flavored tobacco products and tobacco product flavor enhancers. The reason that Children Now is supporting Yes on 31 is because candy flavored products target kids. They get them hooked on tobacco. I have a 10-year-old. I'm interested in not getting hooked on tobacco. This is a personal, professional, and just overall good thing for the state. We also know that big tobacco targets children of color and adults of color, especially with minty menthol cigarettes, and has been doing so for many years. And you'll see if you look at yes, sorry, let me get it right. Vote yes on 31.com. You can see the organizations, including the Cancer Society, Lung Association, Heart Association, as well as Children Now, other children's organizations, Black-led organizations, Latino organizations that are supporting the effort. This will save taxpayers millions because when kids don't start smoking because they're not hooked on candy flavors like gummy bear, chocolate, and minty menthol, then they're not going to have those costs, those exorbitant health care costs later in life. And 80% of kids who use tobacco today started with a flavored product. Again, if you want more information or to help out, you can go to voteyesonthirty1.com. And I don't want to belabor it. I'm assuming I'm preaching to the choir generally, and would love to hear any questions or thoughts that you might have about this important proposition. I would just say, sorry, I do have one more thing to say. Part of the cynicism of big tobacco putting this initiative on the ballot is that they know that if people are confused, they will vote no. And so that's why they're trying to trip you up. So important to, if you speak about 31 and are in support, to make sure to encourage folks yes on 31. And that's why we're trying to have that be sort of the tagline for 31. This is also not my day job. Children Now is supporting because we think it's good for children's health. And we think it's important for the state. So now I'll be quiet and take any questions.
Before we get to questions, and Pat, I saw that your hand's up. We of course don't want flavored tobacco, okay? But we thought we would give the alternative so that if people are talking to the people, they'll know what their arguments are going to be and they can think ahead of time. So Rick, would you like to give the comments that the League of Women
Sure.
had prepared for us?
Sure. Those who are opposing Proposition 31 think the law is unfair since lawmakers have exempted hookah tobacco, expensive cigars, and flavored pipe tobacco. They think that it'll hurt the small businesses and will push licensed retailers to an underground market. They think this will lead to an increase youth access to crime. And finally, the state will lose valuable tax revenue. And those are their main points on the other side.
Okay, thank you. Pat, do you have a question or comment?
No, I failed to lower the hand when Chris was speaking, so I don't. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, Kelly, would you like to respond to those reasons?
Sure thing. And I would just also direct you to vote yes on 31.com. There's a Q&A there that answers some of those, you know, arguments that the opposition is putting forward. I would address that, you know, would this create an illicit market or lead people to crime? That's not what we're seeing. Canada banned menthol cigarettes in 2017, not having that problem. California currently has more than 100 local jurisdictions that have passed some kind of ban on flavored tobacco, and we're not seeing that kind of problem. So as to the loss of money, California better figure out how to work without tobacco money, because that's the future if we're going to have a healthy population. So I'm much more interested in saving money by having healthier kids and saving lives.
Okay, thank you. Claire, do you have a question?
Okay, so just to clarify, that includes vaping products and
Yes.
cigarettes also?
Yes, indeed. And I know that vaping is a huge issue. We saw that teens were, you know, use of tobacco was going down and down and down, and then vapes came along, and now tobacco use amongst teens is going the wrong direction. So
Okay.
yes, it would include
Just wanted
vapes.
to be clear. Thank you.
And Shelley?
Yes, in reference to our kids, I can just tell you, because sitting on a school board, we deal with a lot of these kinds of issues, and vaping and Juul and all of those products have been targeted to our youth. That's the difference between the cigars and the other tobacco products. These are specifically have been targeted to the kids, and now, you know, it's in middle schools and high schools, and I can't tell you how big of an issue that it is for us and how unhealthy it is for our kids. So I would definitely urge everybody to vote yes on this particular proposition.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you. Are there any, I don't think there's any more questions. So thank you, Kelly. And we're going to move on to our next proposition, which
Thanks
is,
very much.
thank you. Our next proposition is Proposition 28. Carol Hovey. I'm not sure if Carol, is it Carol Hovey or Hovey? Well, anyway, we'll find out. Carol Hovey will.
Hovey, sorry.
Hovey, okay, we'll speak on supporting Proposition 28, which provides additional funding for arts and music education in public schools. Carol serves as a board member and treasurer of the California Educational Theater Association. In 2016, she had the honor of working closely with State Senator Ben Allen to pass SB 916, which set in motion the process of implementing the reinstated theater and dance credentials in our state. Continuing that work in 2019, she helped create the art standards and more recently the 2020 California Visual and Performing Arts Framework for our state. She is a theater arts teacher, director, and performing arts facility manager in Livermore Valley Joint Unified School District. Thank you, Carol, for being here.
Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of Proposition 28. Proposition 28 is an extremely important proposition for the children in our schools. The initiative will provide more than $900 million every year to arts and music education in California public schools without raising taxes. If passed, the measure would be the largest investment in arts and music education in the country. Arts and music education plays a critical role in helping children learn, develop, and achieve as students and in life. It improves math and reading skills, it fosters creative and critical thinking, it improves self-confidence and mental health, and it helps prepare children for good-paying jobs. Unfortunately, barely 1 in 5 public schools in California has a full-time arts or music program, meaning millions of school children don't have a meaningful opportunity to participate. Our kids deserve better. Austin Butner, who served as LA Unified Superintendent and Cal Arts Board Chair, is leading a coalition of educators, entrepreneurs, and arts and music leaders in support of Proposition 28, which is on our ballot to be voted on. It would increase arts and music education for students in every pre-kindergarten through grade 12 public school in California. Proposition 28 will achieve 4 things. First, it dedicates nearly $1 billion annually in new funding from the State General Fund to arts and music education in public schools without raising taxes. It ensures every student in every pre-K through grade 12 public school in California has access to arts and music education, both traditional arts and music classes and contemporary arts like graphic design, film, and video. The proposition has strong accountability and transparency measures, including requiring public reports from schools to verify the funds are spent as intended. And finally, it improves equity with additional funding for schools that serve more economically disadvantaged families. If passed, Proposition 28 would be the largest investment in arts and music education in the country. The funding comes from the State General Fund, which currently has nearly $100 billion surplus. And Proposition 8 protects existing school funding. It does not take away from, it adds to. The supporters of Proposition 28 include teachers, artists, musicians, entrepreneurs, and arts organizations, including the California Teachers Association, California State PTA, the California Community Foundation, Los Angeles Urban League, SAG-AFTRA, California Music Educators Association, California Dance Educators Association, the California Educators for Arts, and the California Educational Theater Association, as well as many well-known figures in the arts industry, and many more who have come out in support for this measure. The factor that I really want you to understand is that this arts measure will provide the jobs for arts education teachers, credentialed teachers, to be in the classroom with every student in every class level, grade level, throughout their education, so that they can become better citizens, stronger participants in the arts and entertainment industry, which is the largest in the state of California. And we don't have the resources for our students to be able to benefit from arts and music education today, but they would have with Proposition 28 in place.
Thank you, Carol. Again, we're not trying to say that we're against this, but Rick, would you like to give what some of the opposing thing is?
Sure. There's really not too many, but the editorial boards at LA Times and East Bay Times did have editorials opposing Prop 28. And we do want to thank the League of Women's Voters for preparing some information. And there are two potential reasons that you could consider for voting against Proposition 28. One is using a proposition is probably not the best way to create a school budget. And approving this measure will decrease funding for other programs that might be equally or more important. And so those are the reasons, two main reasons given if you were on the other side of Prop 28.
And there are currently no individuals or groups that are opposing Prop 28. Are there any questions? Yeah, Shelley.
Yes, I have